So Paul Krugman wrote an article in the New York Times a few days ago, and he's gone 100% full bore, balls to the wall for Hillary Clinton. I mean, he's just using some decent arguments, some mediocre arguments, some absolutely positively ridiculous arguments in favor of Hillary Clinton. Anything he could think of that's pro-Hillary Clinton, he just slaps it down on a sheet of paper and sends it out to the world. So I was never the biggest Paul Krugman fan, but now I'm really not the biggest Paul Krugman fan. And in fact, I just dislike him because I think, honestly, a lot of this work is dishonest. I think he's saying a lot of stuff that he might know on some level isn't true. So let's break down his new pro-Hillary article, and then at the end I'll tell you one of the reasons, one of the motivations as to why I think he's doing it. So he said the following: Hillary Clinton is a terrible candidate. Hey, that's what the pundits have been saying ever since the election campaign began. You have to go back to Al Gore in 2000 to find a politician who faced as much jeering from the news media over everything from claims of dishonesty, which usually turn out to be based on nothing, to matters of personal style. Strange to say, however, Ms. Clinton won the Democratic nomination fairly easily. I'm going to come back to all these points, and we're going to have fun with them. And now, having pummeled her opponent in 3 successive debates in an overwhelming fashion to win in November, probably by a wide margin, how is that possible? The usual suspects are already coalescing around an answer, namely that she got lucky. When political commentators praise political talent, what they seem to have in mind is the ability of a candidate to match one of a very limited set of archetypes. The heroic leader, the backslapping regular guy you'd like to have a beer with, the soaring orator. Miss Clinton is none of these things. Too wonky, not to mention too female to be a regular guy, a fairly mediocre speechifier. Her prepared zingers tend to fall flat. Yet, the person tens of millions of viewers saw in this fall's debates was hugely impressive all the same. Self-possessed, almost naturally calm under pressure, deeply prepared, clearly in command of policy issues. Oh, and the strength she showed in the debates are also strengths that would serve her well as president. Just thought I should mention that. And maybe ordinary citizens notice the same thing. Maybe obvious competence and poise in stressful situations can add up to a kind of star quality, even if it doesn't fit conventional notions of charisma. Furthermore, there's one thing Miss Clinton brought to this campaign that no establishment Republican could have matched. She truly cares about her signature issues and believes in the solution she's pushing. When she's talking about women's rights or racial injustice or support for families, her commitment, even passion, are obvious. She's genuine in a way nobody in the other party can be. So let's dispel with this fiction that Hillary Clinton is only where she is through a random stroke of good luck. She's a formidable figure and has been all along. I need to take a shower after going through all that. Okay, let me just jump right to why I think he's saying a lot of these things. I don't think he believes half of this shit. I think he's gunning for a position in her administration. I think that's coming across very clearly because he's slobbering all over her and fawning about how great she is. Now, let's address some of these specific arguments because, oh goodness, are they bad. So he says, a lot of the claims of dishonesty, which, quote, usually turn out to be based on nothing. He opens with that. I mean, that's in the first, paragraph or so. Now, notice, he didn't say, okay, now let's go through some of them. Okay, Clinton Foundation, here's a terrible, here's why everybody's lying about the Clinton Foundation, and she's actually super honest, and there's nothing weird about the Clinton Foundation at all. Let's go through, taking Wall Street money and giving all these speeches and getting hundreds of thousands of dollars. Let's go through that and explain why these claims of dishonesty are wrong. He doesn't do that. Why doesn't he do that? Because he can't do that. You want to know why? Because he is dishonest. Guys, it's like the fact that people are still debating this point shows me that many of the characters in the discussion are dishonest actors, or they are massively, deeply, profoundly ignorant. Now, I don't think Paul Krugman is ignorant, because he follows this stuff day in, day out. I mean, politics is his life. Economics is his life. So since that's the case, what's left? It's got to be dishonest. because this isn't an open question. It's not like, oh, well, everybody who says she's a liar, they're lying. But what do you mean? But what about all the documented cases of her lying? What about all the flip-flops? I mean, again, you're putting her up as this paragon of honesty. Well, there are clips out there. It's just, they go on for over 10 minutes of her, I'm against gay marriage, I'm for gay marriage. I'm against the Colombia Free Trade Deal. I'm for the Colombia Free Trade Deal. The list goes on and on.
I have not supported same-sex marriage.
I support marriage for lesbian and gay couples.
I voted for border security, and some of it was a fence. I don't think we ever called it a wall. Maybe in some places it was a wall.
We will not build a wall.
I am a progressive.
I get accused of being kind of moderate and center. I plead guilty.
I will do everything I can to urge the Congress to reject the Colombian Free Trade Deal.
One of our top goals is to complete free trade agreements with Colombia.
I support a $12 national federal minimum wage. I have been supporting the fight for 15. Since when do Democrats attack one another on universal health care? He does eliminate the Affordable Care Act, eliminates private insurance, eliminates Medicare, eliminates Medicaid, TRICARE, Children's Health Insurance Program.
So how can anybody say stuff like this? They're just trying to pull the wool over your eyes. And he says, well, she won the Democratic nomination fairly easily. Did she? A senator who only deep political junkies knew about, a random senator from Vermont named Bernie Sanders. He went from nobody knowing who the fuck he was to getting 47% of the vote against arguably the best-known politician in the country outside of the president. She won it fairly easily, except that a guy who's 97 years old and who's a Jewish socialist, maybe atheist, came up and almost beat her. And oh yeah, by the way, they tipped the scales against her. The DNC colluded with the media. They fucked with the voting times in certain states. They closed the primaries because closed primaries help out the establishment candidate more. So what do you mean? He's just saying shit. And he glosses over it. It's not like, okay, let's take some time and dig into this. Let's dig deep and let me explain why she won the Democratic nomination fairly easily. No, she didn't. A guy who, again, very few people knew, went from nothing to 47% because the more they learned about him, the more they liked him. The more they learned about her, the less they liked her. God, it's such a sad article. And then, I like she's too wonky. Right, that's why people don't like her. She's so smart. That's why we dislike her. She cares so much about the details of policy substance. That's why we're against her. No, I would love it if she was wonky. Fucking Bernie is actually wonky. Every sentence he speaks, there's like 3 policy proposals jammed into each one. All the guy talks about is policy substance. He's the wonk. She's out there, stronger together. Let's be stronger together. We need to break down the barriers because barriers are bad. I'm in favor of good things and I'm against bad things. Yay, I'm with her. You're with me, right? You're with me. Me. Even her fucking slogan, I'm with her, is fucking narcissistic. It's not like, fucking Trump had a good rebuttal to that when he says, oh, she wants you to say I'm with her. I'm going to say I'm with you. Okay, so, but then, of course, he had to slip in the, maybe it's sexism line. She's, people view her, they think she's too wonky, and not to mention too female. Yeah, that's it. That's why I'm against her, even though I'm voting for Jill Stein, a female. Even though I said 1 million times, and I'll say it 1 million more, if it was Elizabeth Warren, I'd be voting for her with a smile on my face. But no, that's it. I must be sexist because I don't agree with your corrupt queen who you're constantly lying about. And then self-possessed. This is what he says about her in the debates. She's self-possessed, almost naturally calm under pressure, deeply prepared, clearly in command of policy issues. Okay, so having the competence to lay out coherent sentences about policy issues doesn't mean you're right about those issues. So, for example, when she talks about Syria, I mean, it's obvious she knows all the actors involved, it's obvious she knows the various groups involved, and she has command of the material. But I think her position is dead wrong. In fact, in 2013, she thought her position was dead wrong because she said, hey, I want a no-fly zone and a safe zone today. And back then she said, look, that'll kill a lot of civilians. So her preferred Syria policy kills a lot of civilians. Now, Paul Krugman might sit there and listen to her talk and go, oh, she's stringing together coherent sentences and the other guy's an absolute moron, so therefore Hillary's better. But you want to talk about a low bar, like, oh, she has command of the material. And does that mean the ideas are correct? Does that mean that the policy substance are the best for everybody involved? No, it just means she has coherent sentences. She knows the difference between Hamas and Hezbollah, unlike fuckface Orange Boy. Oh, wow, amazing. That's great. She knows the difference between the Kurds and the Quds Force and Sunni and Shia, unlike Trump. So that's, command of the material. But again, that's not, like, he sets up this super low bar and then just heaps fawning praise on her. And the other stuff is just the vacuous, vapid shit people have been saying about Hillary all along. Naturally calm under pressure, deeply prepared. These are the kinds of, this is the kind of praise you give somebody when you can't say, hey man, what she laid out there in terms of how she's going to implement single payer is great. Like, when you can't go actually into the details of the policy specifics, you go with, she looked really presidential. Because that's just a wet blanket I could throw over anything to argue that she's better than the other guy. And it's so sad to see this. Calm under pressure. That's what she is. Calm under pressure. What a fucking amazingly low bar. And then she truly cares about her signature issues and believes in the solutions she's pushing. Okay, I don't believe that because then he goes on to say, like women's rights, for example. Oh yeah, she cares so deeply about women's rights, which is why she keeps arming Saudi Arabia to the tune of billions of dollars as they massacre women and children in Yemen on purpose. They bomb schools and hospitals, and oh yeah, the Saudi government bans women from driving, makes them cover up. All these horrific anti-woman laws, they're basically viewed as property. But oh no, she cares so deeply about women's rights, except when she doesn't. But I'm not going to mention when she doesn't because that hurts my narrative. So, oh my God, she cares so deeply about women's rights. Even with the racial, like, oh yes, she cares so much about racial issues, right? Which is why she called, black teens fucking super predators, which is why she voted for the crime bill, which was a disaster. I mean, they're trying to get away with so much shit. Like, you know what it is that really frustrates me about the over-the-top Hillary supporters? They don't even bother to try to respond to the accurate and best criticisms against her. And that's just a logical fallacy, and that's dodging in the clearest way. Like, if you're really going to support this candidate, don't you want to have like a good response when people bring up the policy differences they have with Hillary and why they're so hesitant to support her? Like, don't you want to dig into that and say, well, look, let's account for all this, and hey, I'll still explain why Trump is worse. And by the way, there is an argument there. Like, there are some decent arguments for lesser evilism. But this gets under my skin so much because he's not being honest, and he's not saying, okay, well, look, I think she's a lesser evil, and let me explain why that is. He's just saying, no, she's a superb candidate. She's great, and if you don't believe that, well, you're the bad person here, okay? And you're the one who hasn't diagnosed this accurately. But, Paul, you're just wrong. Look at her history, and you see that, for example, when it comes to healthcare. So she was for single payer. She took a tremendous amount of money from the health insurance industry, and then she flipped and she was against it. She was against a bankruptcy bill that biased the laws in favor of big corporations. And then when she ran for a senator from New York and she took a bunch of money from corporations, she flipped and she was for it. And there's just countless examples of her being on one side of an issue, the money comes in, then she flips to the other side of the issue. The Wall Street speeches where she takes over $600,000 from Goldman Sachs for one, and, $200,000 here from this bank and that Wall Street institution. And then, like, when people on the left and Bernie supporters say, like, come on, man, that's not okay. We got to address this. We got to figure out what's going on here, and we got to try to clean up the system, get the money out of politics, and get more progressive candidates and all this stuff. Their response is never like, okay, you have a point and let's sit down and meet on it. Their response is circle the wagons, go full Democratic apologist. And what this shows to me is the Democratic Party of today really is the Republican Party of the past. And to steal from Bill Maher, the Republican Party is just a group of Civil War reenactors and religious fundamentalists and flat earthers. So you have your insane, bigoted uncle who doesn't know anything about anything, who's also willing to sell out 100% to Wall Street and to corporations. So you have bad social policy and bad economic policy on the Republican side. And on the Democratic side, you have, hey, we'll throw you a bone with social issues. We're kind of maybe pro-gay if you put enough pressure on us. We're sure we'll be better on drug policy, for example. But yeah, when it comes to big banks and when it comes to corporations, we're still going to be 80%, 85% sellouts. And that's the best you're going to get, and shut the fuck up. And instead of people like Krugman and people who are supposed to be on the left being honest and saying, you know what, let's face reality. The system's broken, the system sucks, and the Democrats are horrendous as well. Instead of doing that, all he wants to do is provide these really shitty arguments as to why Hillary Clinton is not a lesser evil, but she's a superb candidate. And remember, as he's saying this, no, the numbers also just prove him wrong. So he goes on in a different part of the article that we didn't cover here, where he goes off on how, oh my God, all the other Republicans would have lost too to Hillary. That's probably true, but that's not because Hillary is good. Because if you look at Bernie Sanders against Donald Trump, Hillary's up by about 6 points on average. Now, it's overwhelmingly likely she's going to win the election, don't get me wrong, because she's been hovering at about that number for a while, which means it's overwhelmingly likely she's going to win. Bernie was up in some polls 15%. The average, he was up about 10 points. So he was crushing Donald Trump by more. Bernie would have crushed the other Republican candidates by more. Martin O'Malley, of all fucking people, probably would have beaten Donald Trump by more. She has a tremendous amount of baggage because a lot of the attacks against her are correct. Not all of them. Not fucking Benghazi and some of the others. But the Clinton Foundation, yes, it's pay-to-play corruption. You know? Her taking all this big money for speeches, that is corruption. And her voting for the Iraq War, that is a problem. Voting for the Patriot Act, that is a problem. Supporting deregulation in the past, that is a problem. Supporting NAFTA, that is a problem. But they want to sweep it all under the rug. And people wonder why new media is flourishing. New media is flourishing because we don't make hacky arguments like fucking Paul Krugman does. That's not fair. There are obviously some people on new media who make hacky arguments. But at least you get some people on this forum who are trying our best to be accurate and honest and open about all this stuff. And when you read this Paul Krugman piece, you get the feeling, oh, that's not even on the table for this guy. I mean, this guy, that ship sailed a long time ago. He's playing defense. It's obvious he's playing defense. And it's so bad that, again, I would argue he's likely trying to gun for a spot in her administration. Because I have a hard time believing he believes some of these preposterous arguments.